Hello everyone. I bet you're watching this video to relax your mind and drift off to sleep. So if you enjoy it, don't hesitate to like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, let me know where you're from and what time you're watching. Are you ready? The exciting story begins right here.
Story 1. In 1986, a man named Thomas Hawks, or commonly known as Tom, was 39 years old. Tom had recently divorced his wife and was living with his two teenage sons. One evening, Tom was having dinner with his sons at a restaurant near his home in California. There, he was captivated by a woman he found very beautiful and elegant. Tom kept looking at the woman until she finally noticed that he was staring at her. Since Tom was a cool widower with a strong build and a rugged beard, the woman named Jackie, who was single and 29 years old, was also interested in him. Tom then approached Jackie, who, as it turned out, was indeed single and 29. They started dating for 3 years until, in 1989, Tom and Jackie got married and lived happily. Before their marriage, Jackie had told Tom that she had been in an accident, and the doctors had declared that she would not be able to have children. However, Tom didn't mind and accepted Jackie as she was. Jackie was also happy because she finally got to experience being a mother to her stepchildren, Tom's sons. Over the years, Jackie dedicated herself as a good homemaker for the two boys. However, as the boys grew up, they decided to work in other cities, leaving their parents feeling a bit of emptiness, especially Jackie, who felt very lonely since she was very close to them. Tom then took the initiative to sell their house and use all of his remaining savings to buy a boat, with the aim of enjoying their old age relaxing and sailing along the California coast. In 2002, Tom bought a second-hand boat at a reasonably low price, and he and Jackie worked on refurbishing and renovating it until it looked beautiful and comfortable. After 2 years of a relaxed life, in 2004, one of Tom's sons shared the exciting news that Tom and Jackie would soon become grandparents. Jackie was thrilled by the news and immediately felt happy, asking her husband, Tom, to sell their boat because they needed to live on land to be closer to their first grandchild. In response, Tom placed ads in several magazines to sell their boat for $500,000. It didn't take long before a couple called Tom, explaining that they had been saving for years to buy a yacht and were interested in Tom's boat. Tom and Jackie, excited, informed their son that they had found potential buyers and would soon complete the transaction. However, a few days later, Tom and Jackie suddenly went missing and couldn't be reached by either of their sons. This raised serious suspicions, as Tom and Jackie were the type of parents who would always be the first to reach out or, at the very least, always return any missed calls from their sons. When their son reported to their uncle, Jim, who was also a retired police chief in California, Jim immediately got into his car and headed to Newport Beach, where Tom's boat was docked. He went with a friend, and when they arrived at the marina, Tom's yacht was indeed still there. Jim thought perhaps the transaction hadn't been completed, which was why the boat was still docked. However, when Jim boarded the yacht to check for Tom and Jackie, he found that no one was aboard. After inspecting the entire boat, Jim noticed several things that seemed unusual for the Tom and Jackie he knew. First, one side of the boat was very messy, which was unlike Tom, who always kept his boat meticulously tidy. Second, the tarp in the cockpit area was shifted and left unarranged. Third, several dirty towels were hanging haphazardly. Jim found all of this very odd, as the Tom he knew would never leave the boat in such a messy state. Since it was getting dark, Jim took out his business card and wrote a message for the new owner to contact him at that number. He explained that his brother-in-law had just sold the boat and was now missing. Jim asked the new owner to reach out to him as soon as possible. A few hours after Jim left, his phone rang, and it was a young woman named Jennifer DeLeon, 21 years old. Jennifer told Jim that she had found his business card inside her yacht. Indeed, her husband had just bought the boat from Tom and Jackie. However, like Jim, Jennifer admitted that they had trouble reaching Tom, as they had a few questions about the boat's controls. In addition, some personal belongings of Tom and Jackie had been left in the boat's closet, so they were also trying to return those items to them. Jennifer explained that the last time they saw Tom and Jackie was when they completed the transaction. After her husband handed a suitcase of cash to Tom and Jackie, the couple immediately got into their car and drove off. Since then, both Jim and Jennifer had been unable to contact Tom and Jackie. Jim then asked Jennifer if she had any idea where the couple might have gone, but Jennifer replied that she didn't know, as they hadn't discussed personal matters, only the details of the boat transaction. However, Jennifer did recall hearing a conversation between Tom and his wife, Jackie, in which Tom mentioned wanting to buy a house in Mexico, near the Arizona border where his sons lived. Jim thanked Jennifer and asked her to inform him if she learned anything about Tom and Jackie's whereabouts. Jennifer asked Jim to do the same if he found out anything. After the call, Jim remembered there was someone who might know where Tom and Jackie were: Patricia, an accountant hired by Tom and Jackie to handle their finances, especially when they were at sea with limited internet access. Patricia managed their bills and paid their taxes. The first thing Jim asked Patricia was, "Hey, have you heard from Tom and Jackie in the past few days?" Patricia replied that she hadn't. Jim then explained the whole situation and asked, "Could you check if Tom made any large deposits into his or Jackie's accounts? A few days ago, Tom just sold his yacht and received a large sum of cash." After checking, Patricia confirmed that no money had been deposited into any of Tom or Jackie's accounts. Jim and Patricia both paused for a moment, trying to figure out why Tom and Jackie hadn't deposited such a large amount of money. It seemed something was wrong. Extremely concerned, Jim immediately called the Newport Beach Police Department in California to report Tom and Jackie's disappearance. The first step the police took in the case was to gather information from the young couple who had bought Tom's yacht, Skylar DeLeon and his wife, Jennifer. Upon investigation, police discovered that Skylar, who was 25 at the time, was a former convict who had previously been imprisoned for armed robbery. This raised immediate red flags, and the investigation quickly focused on the DeLeon family, who were the last known people to see Tom and Jackie. Skylar was summoned to the police station to give his statement. There, he was asked to explain his last interaction with Tom and Jackie. Skylar was very cooperative, telling the police that he initially saw Tom's yacht advertisement in a magazine and immediately called the number listed. After speaking over the phone, he and Tom met a few days later to do a test drive of the yacht. After the test drive, Skylar told Tom he loved the yacht and would complete the payment soon. On November 15, 2004, Skylar went to the marina with his wife Jennifer, who was pregnant, and their child to make the payment to Tom and Jackie. He also brought a notary and a friend to accompany him and serve as witnesses for the transaction. When they met, Skylar handed Tom a suitcase filled with cash, which Tom then gave to his wife Jackie. Tom then signed several sale documents with the notary present. Once everything was completed, Tom and Jackie got into their car and immediately drove away. However, when the police asked Skylar where he had gotten so much money to buy a yacht, Skylar explained that he was a former child actor from the 90s. He mentioned that one of the shows he appeared in was the Power Rangers series, where he played a cameo or minor role. He claimed that, thanks to that small role, he managed to save up bit by bit over the years, eventually amassing enough to buy a yacht. But the police were skeptical of his answer and kept pressing him. Eventually, Skylar admitted that the money wasn't from his child acting career. It was actually stolen money he had hidden away before he went to prison. After being released, he intended to launder the stolen money by buying a yacht. While the police considered arresting Skylar for money laundering, they decided to let him go, as he was being very cooperative and helpful with the information he provided. The police then continued by interrogating Skylar's wife, Jennifer. They also went on to question the notary and Skylar's friend, who had acted as witnesses in the transaction. The three of them were interrogated separately, and their statements matched Skylar's previous story. Feeling frustrated and concerned that the case was approaching a dead end, the police asked the TV media to report on Tom and Jackie's disappearance, including their photos and the car they were last seen driving. They requested that anyone who had seen Tom, Jackie, or their car contact the police immediately. Sure enough, the police received a call from an elderly couple in Mexico. The couple informed the police that they had seen the news, and the car from the broadcast was now parked in front of their home. Local authorities in Mexico quickly responded and went to the location. However, when they arrived, Tom and Jackie were not in the car. Instead, a young local man, who appeared very confused, was found in the car. He explained that he didn't know anyone named Tom or Jackie. The car actually belonged to his friend, Skylar DeLeon. The police immediately realized they had been deceived by Skylar DeLeon, and they were now certain that Skylar knew the whereabouts of Tom and Jackie. Armed with Skylar's recorded statements, the police detained him on money laundering charges and searched his house for additional clues. Inside Skylar and Jennifer's home, police found numerous personal items belonging to Tom and Jackie, such as a camera and a laptop, providing clear evidence. However, Skylar continued to deny any wrongdoing, as did his wife, Jennifer, who appeared on various talk shows to defend Skylar. Jennifer stated that her husband had done nothing wrong and insisted that this was all a misunderstanding. She emphasized that they had no involvement in Tom and Jackie's disappearance. However, the police were no longer willing to be deceived by the DeLeon family's claims. They decided to reinterrogate both the notary and Skylar's friend, who had served as witnesses to the transaction. Kathleen Harris, the notary, came to the police station and endured hours of questioning that left her physically and mentally exhausted. Finally, she broke down and admitted that she had never actually met Tom and Jackie. It had all been a hoax. She had simply been paid by Skylar to validate the sale documents. The notary swore to the police that she had no knowledge of what had happened to Tom and Jackie. The police then turned to the other witness, Skylar's friend Alonso McCain. Initially, Alonso stuck to Skylar's original story, but the police urged him to stop lying, informing him that the notary had already confessed to the falsehoods. Shocked, Alonso apologized and promised to tell the whole truth after being promised a reduced sentence. Alonso explained that he met Skylar when they served time in the same prison and had maintained their relationship after being released. In 2004, Skylar approached Alonso, asking for his help to get rid of Tom and Jackie, with a promise of $1 million in payment. On November 15th, Skylar, Alonso, and another man named John Kennedy gathered to execute their plan. John Kennedy was a local thug in California recruited by Skylar to assist them. The three of them went to the marina to do a test drive of the yacht with Tom and Jackie. However, before they boarded the boat, Tom canceled the test drive, citing that it didn't seem like a good day. Skylar immediately called Jennifer to come with their baby. The baby managed to change the initially awkward dynamic into a warmer atmosphere. Tom, who had been hesitant, eventually softened and agreed to sail with them. Just as they were about to board the boat, Jennifer told Tom and Jackie that she wouldn't be joining them because the baby was a bit fussy. At that moment, Alonso noticed Tom's expression change to one of awkwardness and suspicion. However, since Tom was already committed to the test drive, they set sail together. Once they were out in the open sea, Skylar and John approached Tom, telling him they wanted to show him something down below deck. Jackie stayed in the kitchen while Alonso went with Tom to the bedroom. However, Jackie heard sounds of a struggle coming from the bedroom. Before she could react, Alonso jumped on her and tied her up. Then Skylar and John came into the kitchen without Tom. Jackie realized that they were the bad guys. She was forced down to the bedroom to sit beside her husband, who was tied up on the bed. Jackie glared angrily at Skylar and asked why he was doing this to them, especially after they had just met his beautiful wife and lovely child. Jackie just wanted to return to shore and be reunited with her family. However, Skylar didn't care and went back up to pilot the boat to the pre-planned location. In the cabin, Alonso admitted that he could see Tom trying to calm himself and saying that whatever happened, they would face it together. Once their boat reached the deepest point of the ocean, Tom and Jackie were dragged up to the deck and forced to sign the sales documents and a power of attorney over all their bank accounts. After the signing was completed, Tom and Jackie were pulled toward the back of the boat where the anchor was located. At that moment, Jackie, filled with fear, pleaded with Skylar to let her go because she wanted to live to see her grandchild who was about to be born. Unexpectedly, an angry Tom managed to break free from John's grip and kicked at Skylar. But unfortunately, John, who was muscular, quickly caught Tom again. Tom was then made to sit on the floor with Jackie, their backs pressed against each other, and their hands handcuffed together. Skylar ordered John to move the anchor toward the back of the boat and then chain Tom and Jackie's bodies together. After that, Skylar walked to the back of the boat and kicked the anchor into the sea, which would automatically pull Tom and Jackie's bodies down to the ocean floor. Alonso admitted that he saw Skylar laughing joyfully and jumping around like a child. Even more surprising, although Jennifer, Skylar's wife, was not on the boat, it turned out that she was the mastermind behind their actions. In fact, Alonso said that this whole plan was Jennifer's idea. Jennifer was the one who initially found the yacht ad in a magazine and convinced her husband, Skylar, to kill Tom and Jackie, then sell their boat to make money easily. Jennifer also intentionally brought their small baby along so that Tom and Jackie would be softened and fall into their trap. Before and after they carried out their plan, Skylar always made time to contact Jennifer just to update her on the progress of their scheme and to discuss what they should do next. The most shocking part of this case was Jackie's camera. When the police found the camera at Skylar and Jennifer's home, they reviewed its footage and discovered a video recorded by Jackie herself. In the video, Jackie expressed her happiness about selling the boat and being able to reunite with her children and grandchildren. However, when the police tried to view the subsequent recordings, the video switched to footage recorded by Jennifer, showing their small family celebrating a Thanksgiving dinner while playing with their little daughter. This happened just a few days after they had killed Tom and Jackie, which was extremely inhumane given that they had just committed such a heinous act. Jennifer and Skylar even used the camera to record all of their family activities without feeling any guilt. In the end, Alonso was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Jennifer De Leon received a life sentence, while Skylar De Leon and John Kennedy were sentenced to death. Story 2. San Jose, California, United States, is a quiet area with neatly lined residential houses. The residential neighborhood is well maintained because its residents are diligent about cleaning their surroundings and trimming the weeds in their yards. There are also several vehicles parked along the streets, such as buses, SUVs, and shiny sedans. In addition, American flags are displayed and waving on every porch. However, the city is not without its share of crime, such as theft and carjacking. On June 6, 2003, at 4 p.m., a school bus arrived to pick up students in the Southwind Drive area of San Jose. One of the passengers was 9-year-old Jeanette Tamayo, a fourth-grade student at Bellasumble Elementary School. After getting off the bus, Jeanette waved goodbye to the driver and her friends. She then walked towards her home. Upon arriving, Jeanette was surprised to find the front door slightly ajar. The 9-year-old had no negative thoughts, assuming that her mother and older sister had returned from gardening. The girl then closed the door and called out for her mother, but there was no response at all. It turned out that her mother and sister had not yet returned home. Jeanette then went to her room to change clothes and rest. While inside, the girl was startled to find shards of broken glass scattered around. At that moment, Jeanette began to feel anxious. She suspected that an intruder was trying to break into her house. Before long, she heard footsteps and a knock on the door, but she did not want to open it and instead chose to peek through the living room window. Jeanette saw an unfamiliar adult man from behind the door. The man began talking to Jeanette and asked her many questions. This mysterious figure also said that he wanted to come inside the house. Jeanette started to panic as the strange man tried to peer into the house through the window. At that moment, Jeanette became very frightened and began to cry. She then tried to call her mother, but the home phone was unusable. Moments later, Jeanette realized that the phone line had been cut. Before long, the mysterious man forced his way in and opened the sliding door of Jeanette's house. The girl tried to back away and evade him, but the stranger quickly caught her and took her to one of the rooms in the house. There, the man unbuttoned Jeanette's pants and began to assault her. The girl was utterly confused by what was happening to her. She could only surrender and was unable to resist. Afterward, The man tied Jeanette's legs with rope, handcuffed her hands, and gagged her with a cloth. He then dragged the girl to the garage and put her into a car. Not long after, Jeanette heard the sound of a car engine approaching her home. She hoped that her mother and sister had arrived. This time, Jeanette's assumption was correct. Her mother parked the car in front of the garage and saw the stranger trying to abduct her daughter. Jeanette's older brother, Paul, had also noticed from a distance that his sister was being kidnapped by someone. Realizing this, Paul became extremely angry and started to rage. The 14-year-old then grabbed a screwdriver from his car and attacked the stranger. However, the screwdriver was snatched from his hand by the assailant. Paul struggled and became overwhelmed while battling the kidnapper. The teenager was dealt a barrage of blows that sent him staggering and crashing to the ground. The mother, named Rosalina Tamayo, tried to help her son, but the woman was brutally beaten in the face by the kidnapper. At that moment, Paul struggled to get up and ran to the kitchen to grab a pot, trying to hit the kidnapper on the head with it. However, the stranger countered the attack, pummeling Paul until the teenager fell down, battered and bruised. After both of his victims lay helpless, the stranger rushed to his car and drove away with Jeanette inside. The girl saw her mother struggling to stand and trying to chase after her, albeit weakly. Jeanette watched as Rosalina grew farther away, realizing that her mother was staggering while enduring immense pain. Jeanette couldn't hold back her tears, but she couldn't scream because her mouth was gagged with cloth. In her heart, she felt very sorry for her mother, whose face was smeared with red marks. The girl was also deeply worried about Paul, who was unconscious after falling with severe injuries. In an instant, Jeanette's thoughts became chaotic, and her vision started to blur from the tears she couldn't wipe away. At Paul's house, he had begun to regain consciousness after fainting. The teenager remembered his sister's safety, which needed to be fought for, without considering his own pain. Paul ran around, calling for help from anyone who could hear him. He pleaded for someone to notify the police about Jeanette's kidnapping. Soon after, several people approached Paul and helped him. They took the teenager back to his home and reported the incident to the police. Before long, officers arrived at the scene to conduct an investigation. Meanwhile, medical personnel intended to evacuate Paul and Rosalina to the hospital via ambulance, but the mother refused to go. She preferred to stay at home and asked relatives for assistance in caring for her. Meanwhile, the police interviewed the neighbors regarding the incident involving Rosalina's family. One neighbor, who lived 3 houses away from Jeanette's residence, informed the police that he had CCTV footage from his home. The surveillance camera captured the street in the neighborhood. The neighbor then provided the CCTV recording to the authorities for immediate investigation. In the footage, an old car was seen entering Jeanette's house, but the video was too blurry to clearly identify the vehicle's license plate. In handling kidnapping cases, the police usually activate an Amber Alert. However, in Jeanette's case, the officers postponed doing so because they did not yet have the suspect's vehicle license plate. An Amber Alert is a notification system for child abductions originating in the United States, created in 1996. The police in San Jose would activate an Amber Alert once they obtained information about the victim's name, a description of the incident, witness statements, and the license plate of the vehicle used by the suspect. The police then asked for the help of journalists to cover the news about Jeanette's disappearance. Officers also instructed the media to broadcast the story regularly on television. This was done so that everyone throughout the city could be aware of the kidnapping case involving the 9-year-old girl. After hearing this news, residents on Southwind Drive expressed their concerns about the safety of their children. Community members across San Jose were also very saddened by what happened to Jeanette. They hoped that such an incident would not happen again in the city. On the other hand, Rosalina felt that she had failed in protecting Jeanette. The woman deeply regretted that she could not adequately protect her daughter. In a different place, Jeanette, bound and gagged, was in a car with her kidnapper. The girl banged her body against the car door to attract the attention of other drivers, but her efforts never bore fruit. The kidnapper, seeing Jeanette's behavior, became very angry and struck her until she fell and lay under the car seat. Shortly thereafter, the kidnapper stopped the vehicle and took Jeanette to a two-story house with brightly colored walls. The man then went up the stairs and entered the bedroom while carrying Jeanette. He laid the girl down on the mattress in the room. Although it was somewhat small, the room was equipped with a window, television, and bathroom. The kidnapper then untied Jeanette's legs and handcuffed her. Additionally, he removed the cloth covering the girl's mouth. The man then started a conversation and said that he would rape her for the second time. The kidnapper also warned that if the girl resisted, he would act violently toward her. Eventually, Jeanette was raped again by the man multiple times. After that, the man instructed Jeanette to clean herself up and then handcuffed her again. At that moment, Jeanette tried to observe how the handcuffs worked. She realized that they were mechanical or automatic. When the kidnapper left her alone in the room, Jeanette began to fiddle with the handcuffs. Over time, she managed to unlock the device on both of her wrists, allowing her to watch television and use the remote. On one channel, Jeanette watched a program discussing asthma and other health issues. The girl became inspired and planned to deceive her kidnapper. Not long after, Jeanette heard the footsteps of the kidnapper coming up the stairs and heading toward her room. She quickly put the handcuffs back on her wrists. As the kidnapper was about to assault her again, Jeanette said that she suffered from asthma and a contagious disease. The girl also expressed that she could die if she didn't take her medicine soon. To her surprise, this tactic worked. The man felt pity for Jeanette's condition. The kidnapper then asked his victim, "Are you hungry and want something to eat?" Jeanette nodded and replied, "Yes, I'm hungry." The man then walked downstairs to get his phone. Shortly afterward, the kidnapper handed the phone to Jeanette and told her to order pizza. He also provided his address to Jeanette to relay to the food delivery person. At this opportunity, the girl tried to remember the details of the address given by her kidnapper. Additionally, Jeanette memorized the kidnapper's phone number from the phone while ordering the pizza and stating the home address. Jeanette spoke with hesitations, and the pizza delivery person could tell that the girl ordering the food was in a state of fear. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang, and someone called out, "Excuse me," while half shouting that the pizza had arrived. The kidnapper left Jeanette and hurried to collect the order at the front gate. While her kidnapper was walking to meet the pizza delivery person, Jeanette stood by the window, facing outward, hoping that the delivery person would notice her. On the other hand, the kidnapper received the pizza and paid for it. The man then headed straight to Jeanette's room and handed her a box of pizza along with a folded piece of paper on top. The paper was a missing person flyer with Jeanette's face on it. The mysterious man then instructed his captive to eat the pizza, but surprisingly, the kidnapper also mentioned that he would soon get rid of Jeanette that very night. Hearing this, Jeanette became very frightened, feeling that she would never return home safely. Jeanette thought that the man would take her life in a very cruel manner. On one hand, the girl missed her mother and her older sister very much. She did not want to be separated from them for such a long time. Meanwhile, the pizza delivery person had noticed Jeanette from the gate. The person did not move from their spot and continued to observe the girl's room from a distance. Vaguely, they sensed something unusual, but the delivery person had to return to the shop to continue their tasks. As night fell, Jeanette prayed to God that she would be able to return home safely. The girl then forced her mind to think hard to find a way to save herself. Soon, Jeanette remembered a television show she often watched at home. Together with her sister, the show featured detectives dealing with criminal cases. From there, Jeanette learned that a detective needed fingerprint evidence to identify the perpetrator. Not long after, the girl took the kidnapper's watch from a small table in the room. She also grabbed a turtle-shaped toy and the kidnapper's underwear that had been left in the bathroom. By taking these items, Jeanette hoped that the police could collect samples from the kidnapper's body. Jeanette then stored these items in the empty pizza box. Next, she placed the box under her bed. Shortly afterward, the kidnapper returned to her room and asked if the girl had eaten her pizza. Jeanette said that she had eaten all the food. Fortunately, the kidnapper did not check the food box or look for the items that Jeanette had taken. The man then left the girl alone in silence for a while. Jeanette always thought that the kidnapper would execute her right then and there. She shuddered at the thought of the crimes that the mysterious man might commit. Not long after, the kidnapper returned to Jeanette's room and observed the girl's face. The man noticed that his victim was very scared when she saw him, but he did not want to show her too much compassion. After that, he tied Jeanette's legs and gagged her mouth. The kidnapper then picked her up and laid her in the trunk of the car. Before long, the man drove his vehicle very fast. In the cramped, dark, and stuffy trunk, Jeanette cried softly while imagining her mother's and sister's faces. She was overwhelmed with fear, picturing the kidnapper hurting her and taking her life. The journey felt very long for Jeanette. She forced herself to concentrate and memorize some of the turns they had taken. A little while later, the kidnapper stopped his car in a shopping area in Palo Alto. He then opened the trunk and pulled Jeanette out. The man untied the ropes on Jeanette's legs and removed the cloth that gagged her mouth. After a moment, the kidnapper grabbed Jeanette's chin and threatened her not to report him to the police. Jeanette could only nod her head while crying. The man also warned that he would hide Jeanette and her family if the police found out about her. He then pushed the girl into the middle of the road and told her to go away. At that moment, Jeanette ran laboriously toward a convenience store located not far from the highway. She sat on the store's stoop, crying uncontrollably. She felt very scared because there was no one around her. However, on the other hand, Jeanette felt a great sense of relief that she was still alive and had not been eliminated by her kidnapper. Not long after, a store clerk approached Jeanette. He tried to calm the girl down and engage her in conversation. The man asked, "Child, what is your name and why are you here?" At that moment, Jeanette didn't respond right away. Instead, she cried and babbled. The girl spoke incoherently, saying that she was scared. It turned out that the kidnapper's threats were still echoing in Jeanette's mind. She pleaded with the clerk not to report it to the police. Hearing this, the store clerk became confused by the girl's words. He tried to reassure her, giving her some water and urging her to come into the store. After that, the clerk introduced himself and said his name was Isa Yassin. A little while later, Isa realized that the girl was Jeanette, who had been reported missing a few days earlier. He immediately offered to help contact Jeanette's parents. Without waiting for a response, Isa handed his phone to Jeanette. However, Jeanette continued to cry and showed signs of fear. After observing the girl's behavior, Isa decided to call the police. He told the officers that Jeanette was with him and was unharmed. Soon, the police arrived at the store, and the officers took Jeanette into their car. While in the vehicle, Jeanette pulled items from her pockets and handed them to the officers. At this moment, the authorities gathered information from the girl and wanted to apprehend the perpetrator as soon as possible. Jeanette explained her experience during the kidnapping very clearly. The girl was also able to remember the kidnapper's home address and his phone number well. In fact, Jeanette could recall every turn she took to get to the kidnapper's house. She even drew a map showing the direction to the mysterious man's residence. Jeanette then handed the drawing to a detective named Heather Rendell. Seeing this, the detective was amazed by Jeanette's intelligence. Additionally, the girl shared her experience of being instructed to order pizza by her kidnapper with the police to confirm her statements. The officers inquired with the pizza shop owner about that address. It turned out that the information matched what Jeanette had said. The police immediately rushed to the house indicated by the girl. Upon arriving there, they conducted a raid and searched the perpetrator's home. At that time, the kidnapper was in the attic of his house. He resisted the officers and attempted to escape. Eventually, the police deployed several tracking dogs to subdue the suspect. The dogs successfully bit the kidnapper's leg, bringing him down helplessly. The perpetrator was then subdued by the officers and taken to the police station. There, he was interrogated very firmly by the detective. Through this interrogation process, it was discovered that the suspect had several aliases but revealed that his real name was David Montiel Cruz, a 26-year-old man. He also admitted to frequently committing kidnapping and abuse against minors. Meanwhile, Jeanette had been taken to the hospital and was reunited with her mother and sister. At that moment, the girl noticed scars on Rosalina's face, which made it difficult for her to recognize her mother at first. However, it didn't take long for Jeanette to recognize her mother while crying. "Rosalina, seeing her daughter safe, felt extremely relieved and happy. Sometime later, the trial for Jeanette's case was held at the San Jose court. In that trial, David was sentenced to 102 years in prison for his actions against Jeanette and other victims. Jeanette was very grateful to have escaped that ordeal and felt that the perpetrator received a fitting punishment. She also vowed to help many people out there who were struggling and experiencing kidnapping and assault. The girl aspired to become a detective and wanted to assist victims of crime. After several decades, Jeanette was reunited with the detective who had helped her.